Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. This is session 6 of the Sutta studies for the Rains Retreat 2023. And today's theme is Samasati, right mindfulness, the seventh factor of the Eightfold Path. And this is a bit of a special theme. One aspect is that this is sort of, you can say, a particular spiritual quality unique to the Buddha. You know, of course, all the spiritual teachings talk about morality. Some also mention about different kinds of views. Some even maybe emphasize some degree of collectedness or concentration. But it's really only in Buddhism that you have such a prominent emphasis upon sati, mindfulness. So this was a teaching which the Buddha obviously found very exceptionally useful, and even in one sutta it says was because of sati the Buddha was able to realize enlightenment actually. And so the Buddha, he makes some very dramatic definitions, introductions, and also conclusion about the practice of sati. And during this time, I should say that I'll be making quite a bit of reference to this book here, Venerable Analio. If you're serious about studying Satipatthana, then this is the book. Although it's a little bit academic, it's his PhD thesis on Satipatthana. But it's extremely comprehensive, and you can always, if you have some queries about certain aspects of the practice, you can read about that, and you can skip over some of his discussions, because he goes into all kinds of discussions about, you know, different, why people use certain terms and definitions and things, but some of it's not really necessary for the understanding of the practice. But I'll be making reference to this, so if you hear the word analio, that's what I mean. I'll quote him. So in the this particular discourse the Buddha gave, the Satipatthana Sutta, this is it's a very it's a bit of quite a polished sutta. There's a very clear pattern to it. Starts off with an introduction, of course. The Buddha was at a certain place and he met these people and gave this talk. And then there's a whole series of exercises. There's a definition first, what Satipatthana is, and then there's a whole series of exercises. And after each exercise is what's called a refrain, how to practice it. So first of all, be a definition of what actually is sati. And the Buddha gives 4 particular themes for development of sati. And it is said in the sutta, it does say that the practicing all of these satipatthanas results in arahantship, full realization. But most of the teachers, meditation teachers, usually just emphasize one of these satipatthana. I mean, some say that if you practice one of them, then also by association, if you practice the body, most of them are focused on the body awareness, for example, body contemplation. With body contemplation, you also can become aware of feeling. If you're aware of body has feeling. And also, you're using the mind to observe the body, so you learn something about the mind. So they say that with just using one of them, particularly body contemplation, you also understand about the other 4. However, the sutta does say you need all four of them to realize awakening. And I would say, especially nowadays, while most of the ajahns focus on body contemplation, nowadays I would say that so many people are basically disembodied, not so easy to contemplate the body. Certainly in the Buddhist time, they didn't have a lot of, like internet and electronic gadgets to have to play around with your mind. Or they play with your mind, you play with it. It's stuff with your mind. And they had their life was very, very bodily based. I mean, just living in northeast Thailand, the people there were so grounded. Every day going out into the rice fields and living very close to nature. They had so much natural body awareness. It was quite surprising. I used to, sometimes I would be there and I watched some of the Westerners, walking around. They'd be kind of staggering around, stumbling around through the forest. And then you see these Thai villagers come in and they just kind of float through the place, stepping over the ants and stepping over the the Westerners just kind of come stumbling in there like a bunch of elephants. And I realized, they already have, they grew up with this, with this body, natural body awareness already, So then taking up these formal exercises, they already have a certain talent. But for many Westerners, we're so much up in our head that we sort of disembodied most of the time. And so, and I also then think, my opinion, it's not in the scripture, but my opinion, that we probably have to do more development of awareness of states of mind, for example, because so much of our confusion has to do with states of mind compared to, our disembodiment. But anyway, the way the sutta, the discourse is outlined, there is a series, I would say it's even progressive, a series of exercises, beginning with body awareness. And maybe I should first of all talk about what sati is first. Right? Sati? Since it is key to the whole practice. So the word sati comes originally from a word which means memory. But it's not just memory. Memory would actually be more sanya rather than sati. But as Venerable Analayo points out, it's what is foundational to memory. That means attention. So sati, I would say, while mindfulness is a pretty good translation in general, but for many people it's quite unfamiliar. Mindfulness, what's that? And it has become so misused, so may use many different contexts. Many of them are not even Buddhist anymore. So now, even the word mindfulness, it becomes, what are you talking about? People have maybe a general idea, but they don't really have the context of this as a special Buddhist practice. And most people have not learned how it's practiced in the Buddhist teachings. So you get a bit of a distortion then. So I would make a little bit of a change and just say, first of all, what's prominent is it is attentiveness, being attentive. So if you are attentive, of course, you can remember easily. It's a support for memory, if you are attentive to something. So using that, and then it is a certain kind of attentiveness. For example, it is much more broad attentiveness. And it is a relaxed attentiveness, not being tense, not being focused on it. Focused attention becomes concentration or collectedness, where sati is more broad, relaxed attentiveness. And of course, attentiveness happens in the present moment. I don't need to say that, do I? Present moment attentiveness, that's attention as it's happening is in the present moment anyway. And it is attentiveness in itself. That is, most of the time people know, attention is one of the fundamental or functions of the brain. We all have attention to some degree. But for most people, it's just momentary, and then they start to discuss or discurse or contemplate or digress into what they are attentive to. Is it this and is it that? It could be this, it could be that. I like this, I don't like that. But sati is just the attentiveness itself, and there's no interpretation about it. There's no intellectual activity about it. It comes basically from the silent mind. In order to be attentive to what's happening, your mind needs to be mentally quiet, just to see, observe. Attentiveness, observing, just seeing what is there, being present with what is there at any particular time. And even if there are reactions to it, then you can be attentive to that too. You know, if you see some object, and then you think it might be a snake or something, you have fear arising, so you can be attentive to what you see, attentive to what's the prominent emotional reaction, which would then be awareness of states of mind. Whatever is most prominent in your awareness, then you be attentive to. So then when it comes to this satipatthana, that means the way the Pali is, it probably is sati and upatthana, and that which means, upatthana means to place near. So that means basically you're placing sati near something. Then the Buddha gives 4 themes where to put your sati. And then in the refrain, he mentions how to practice that observing, that attentiveness. Most of the commentaries and some of the teachers follow this, and they would take this sati as from patthana, foundation. So that's why you hear often the foundations of mindfulness. But so these are the basis of the most important themes, I guess you'd say, to place sati on, to contemplate, and to realize the end cessation of suffering then. So when the Buddha introduces it, in his introduction, he says this is the direct path, right? Direct path to awakening. Yeah, right? You read that? Direct. Yeah. So some people might think, oh, well, here it is, a direct path. I found it finally. And it's only 20 pages, It's not like it's the whole Pali Canon with all these different discourses. There's just 20 pages. So they think it must be easy. That's what I thought anyway. But then as you look at the instructions, the instructions and the refrain, there's a lot of information there. Very, very detailed, how to proceed. Not just the 4 themes, but the 4 themes are also expanded. And then there's the refrain of how to practice it. Being aware of the internally and externally, the arising factors, the passing away factors, as well as it mentions also some other qualities that are helpful to support the development of sati. So in a way, sati is to be developed. So it's a little bit, maybe a little bit hard to give it one definition. Because in the beginning, this sati, we all have this state of mind, this quality of mind or function of mind. Every human being has this, but the Buddha realized the importance of raising it to the level of, say, a spiritual power. That it has a much more transformative aspect to it. And in Buddha's teachings, like in the forest tradition, many forest ajahns, they talk about sati panya. They talk about panya, which was, of course, this is the culmination of the Buddha's practice, is to realize the way things really are, panya. And as it comes from sati. Most people don't recognize that. We think wisdom or knowledge, anyway, comes from books, reading and thinking, and what the Buddha is saying, it's not enough. It's not enough. You need direct realization through observing, through attentiveness, to see the way things really are. And that will arrive at a certain kind of panya, direct realization then. So the Satipatthana tells us, directs us to what to be attentive to, the 4 themes, and how to be attentive, the method of directing attention to. I mentioned the arising and passing away, for example. And basically these four themes, I would say they are sort of progressive. Starting off with the body, then there is feelings, then there is states of mind, then there is dhammas, which are specific states of mind, if you like, specific categories of states of mind. And first of all, I would say that the body, for example, is the simplest, except for this embodiment, but it is the simplest basically, and is also, I would say, is the first object of identification. You know, as soon as we're born, maybe even before, as soon as we're born anyway, you know, the strongest impression we have is physicality, the body. Eat, sleep, excrete. Yeah, maybe you can't remember that, but that's how it was, folks. I'm sorry. Not a lot of intellectualizing when you're a week old. We're here down to basic bodily functions. So for the first, early years of your life, basically your only experience of life, of being born, is bodily functions. Maybe some feeling, maybe some feeling in there too, feelings of discomfort and that, but and you probably aren't able to distinguish them from the body yet. It's all to do with the body. So it's a very rudimentary or primal source of identification, of attachment, if you like. And we have this body with us our whole life, you see. Sometimes our memory fades, but the body's still there, whether we know it or not. right till the end of life, you see. Maybe you can even losing your mental faculties, but your body is still there, you see. So maybe that's why the Buddha gives us, for the theme of body awareness, body contemplation, there's 6 different exercises. And also they are sort of progressive too, from simple ones to more advanced ones, in the sense of there's more things to be aware of, and the exercises change from just knowing to visualization at the end. In the corpse meditations, there's a visualization. You have to be able to reflect, what you see outside this decaying corpse is similar to this body. This body will be like this too, eventually. It requires a little bit of a more advanced, exercise of your mind, of contemplation, rather than just knowing, just observing. So there's a bodily exercises, that's the body. There's 6 feelings, 16 states of mind are mentioned, and 27 dhammas. So it's a bit more, hopefully you're getting, clever too, as you're getting more mindful, more attentiveness. You're remembering better too, remembering all these categories. So now we come to this sutta itself, and after the Buddha is saying, very dramatically, this is the direct path for surmounting, old age, sickness, and death, for sorrow, lamentation, grief, and despair. You should be inspired. Oh, this sounds like it's very useful, very important to understand this. Then there's a definition of what it is. The passing beyond of sorrow and grief, disappearance of suffering and dejection, for reaching the right path, for the realization of nibbana, namely the 4 attendings with mindfulness. And then he gives what is this, the definition. So, with regard to the body, one abides contemplating the body, earnestly, clearly knowing, and mindful, having put away desire and disappointment concerning the world. Then the same definition is applied to with regard to feelings. One abides contemplating feelings, earnestly, clearly knowing, and mindful. In regard to the mind, one contemplates the mind, then contemplates mental phenomena, the dhammas. So these 4 themes, as I say, there are progression, and the progression is, besides being more detailed and refined, it is also, a development of sati itself. You're starting off with observing something quite coarse, the body, for example. Then feelings, a little more subtle, observing feelings. States of mind are not only are they a great variety of states of mind, but sort of where does one state of mind end, next one begin? And then the dhammas, the 6 different categories of dhammas, 5 different categories of dhammas, which requires already some knowledge of the body and the mind, because they deal with the hindrances, for example, the 6 senses. So we be able to develop sati. I mean, sometimes you can say that developing sati, as I mentioned, with regard to the body, some of the teachers say, then as sati develops, then it exposes also. Attentiveness becomes more strengthened and broadened, and it just comes across because there is feelings and states of mind happening anyway. You don't have to kind of give special attention to them. They're happening anyway. But for many people, there's just so much going on, so much bodily sensation, feelings, states of mind. They just like a big cloud. Can't see anything. Can't discern anything very clearly. They can't see it very clearly. They can't be attentive to any particular aspect of it because it's just so much. So this is like taking a magnifying glass and looking at one part at each time, you see. Look carefully, looking at this, just like walking outside in nature there, and you say, what to look at. But if you have your magnifying glass, you go over to the flower, you go to the butterfly, you go to the ants. And the Buddha realized, of course, these 4 themes are very, very important for the realization of the way things really are. And we have them with us all the time. Until we understand them, we're going to be deluded by them, imprisoned by them, fooled by them. Yeah. But you really begin to understand the body as it really is, there's a possibility to be free of the body, free of your attachment to feelings, the states of mind. Where for most of us, this is the source of our identification, body, feelings, states of mind. So we can really understand what they are, we begin to see through them. We're grasping at air, really, this body, trying to grasp at the body, but just this body's constantly changing all the time. Which body you're grasping, the one you're holding on to now is already passed away, and it's a new one. It's a different body. But it's not how we see it, unless you have some sati and clear knowing of what the nature of the body really is. So anyway, and then we come across for the definition of how to practice this, contemplation. That's the Pali word anupassana. So the English word contemplation, I think, is a very good translation of it, contemplate. Pasi means to see, and anu is emphatic, to see clearly, to see it clearly, to contemplate, to look at it from different angles. Just like, and this is using the word pasi, to see, hopefully gives the emphasis to look directly at it rather than just think about it. So people just think about things. Maybe this and maybe that, but this is trying to see it. It's just like looking at something from different angles now. So contemplation means to repeatedly look at something or observe closely. And then there is this particular phrase to observe the body in the body, to contemplate the body in the body. And some people are a little bit, it's not a very common English word, body in the body, or phrase. Yeah? What the Buddha is trying to point at, I think, is that to look at the body as a body itself. Most people, they look at something and then they start to interpret, evaluate this and like that, and I like it and don't like it, rather than just see the body as the body itself. That's why I say that sati only functions if the mind is very quiet. You don't have all this interpretation and expectations and putting preconceptions onto it, just trying to see it as it is. So we want the body, and the body means that it's direct experience. Venerable Analayo translates this phrase as, in the body, abide contemplating the body. So you're settled in the body itself and contemplating the body from the body as a direct experience then. And then it has these other supportive ways of looking at that, of contemplating. One does it earnestly or diligently or ardently, applying a certain amount of serious energy to it, just not just casually, but one has to put some effort into it to observe the body. Clearly knowing, this is the Pali word sampajanya, and this pajanya is knowing, and some part of it is adding on to adding emphasis to it. Just clearly knowing. So this implies that there is the sati, attentiveness, and then the knowing part. You say sati panya, if you like, already starting to as a grounding for more advanced degrees of understanding. And then mindful with sati, and then free from desires and disappointment. Disappointments is this word domanassa, which can be translated as grief or discontent. So basically it's free from greed and aversion, if you like. Only if you put aside those are the strongest distractions, the strongest source of interpretation and discursive thought, desires, greed and aversion, that to put them away to some degree. This doesn't mean you have to be an arahant to practice it. You have to temporarily free from desires and disappointment, greed and aversion. So the mind is clear enough to be able to see what's really going on there without all this, I like it or don't like it, or I want to do something with it. Then we come to the refrain. I'll mention the exercises later, but we come to the refrain, which follows each of the exercises. Exercises are laid out, and then there is the refrain, which is how to practice it. So we have the exercises, what to focus sati on, body contemplation. First exercise is awareness of breathing. Then there is, once you're aware of the breathing, then there is the refrain of how to do it. So first of all, when one's aware of the object, you're aware of breathing, right? You're aware of the breathing in a long breath, breathing out a long breath, breathing in a short breath, breathing out a short breath. So you're aware of the theme, and then one is to also contemplate it internally, externally, and then both internally and externally. There is some, you can say, discussion, some disagreements about what externally means, because some people would say, well, thinking too much maybe, think, well, how can you be aware of external feelings? This is internal, your own, and externally is other people's body or feelings, states of mind. How can you be aware of other people's states of mind? Unless you have psychic powers. But even if you could be aware, of other people's states of mind, you can say indirectly by their bodily language. You can read body language. They do express their moods outside too, in the body. And from the exercise to this refrain, it's actually a shift of emphasis from what you're being aware of to the character of what you're being aware of. Not the thing itself. You have to know what the object is, first of all, the breathing, the bodily postures, for example. But then what this refrain does is shift it to now the nature of these things. And then Analayo points out, he has a footnote to mention some, I think it was a psychologist pointed out that who studied meditators, and he said one of the reasons why, basically, Westerners progress more slowly than Asian meditators is because many times they get stuck on the content rather than look at the processes involved. And they're too busy focused on their breathing and don't recognize the breathing is part of a bigger process. The breathing is part of arising and passing away. There's breathing internally, but also breathing externally. It's a natural function of living beings is breathing. But you get so caught up with your own breathing, and you forget that there's a bigger process here. Like this to help to bring in the contemplation of impersonality, if you like, rather than get too focused on your own stuff. And that's why I think this emphasis of internally and externally, and both internally and externally, is supposed to help give a kind of a balance. Basically, if you focus too much internally, you can become dissociated from the outside world. And I think this is one of the reasons why some people they go a bit, especially on intensive meditation retreats, they go a little bit strange because they have so much time with themselves, and not knowing themselves very well, But we don't realize how much, our kind of self-structure is maintained by reference to an external reality. I'm in myself here because I'm not, there's a reality out there somewhere. Likewise, that many worldly people are too much focused on the external, looking outside all the time. Source of happiness is out there, not in here, in their own mind. So they miss the point. They don't do any work on themselves then. They forget that the source is in their own mind. Then if you do the reflection, contemplation on internal and external, it tries to give you that connection then. There is a bigger picture here. We are part of a bigger connection. And then, after that contemplation, then one is to observe the nature of arising and nature of passing away, and both the arising and passing away. So this is also to give a kind of a balance to our perspective and to shift our awareness from the thing itself to the processes involved here. Like sometimes people say, this is the breath meditation. There is no such thing as breath. Where is breath? There's a breathing process. You can't just have an in-breath and stop. I don't like out-breaths. I think I'll just have an in-breath and live happily ever after. Well, you might live happily ever after in heaven when you die, but it's not the nature of breath. It's a breathing process, a continuous arising and passing, arising and passing. That's the real nature of the nature of the way things really are, arising and passing, everything. Even your precious breath, even your precious feeling, my happy feeling is arising and passing. Sorry. Your enlightened state of mind is just arising. I won't say that. It's too far away. But this can give also, you recognize that there is a whole kind of a balanced sequence, arising and passing away, and then arising and passing away. If you give attention to passing away only, some people can get very depressed. Passing away. Oh, gee, who get very, very, very depressed because everything's passing away, and but you keep breathing, rising first, rising. Keep arising. Don't just stay with the passing away. So that's where this both arising and passing away, so you can get a more clear, balanced perspective of reality then. And then it goes on, the refrain continues, that sati, attentiveness, is established just for bare knowledge and continuous sati. The analio, there's a phrase, para, in this para sati, the last part, sati, and he takes the para part to be continuous rather than just sati. So bare knowledge and continuous mindfulness, that there should be a continuous process. Make sure there's a continuity in the practice, not just, okay, now I practice it for a few minutes and then I stop, but to keep it going, keep it functioning in your life. So this is to give this particular refrain is to give us some kind of objective and non-evaluative or interpretive perspective then, just to observe it. And of course, as I mentioned it, especially the rising and passing away, is just to help us to recognize that there's nothing really that we can hang on to as a source of identification. The breath is rising and passing away. The feelings are rising and passing away. States of mind are rising and passing away. Where is your permanent self and all that? It's just mere phenomena arising and passing away. But of course, this comes from a direct realization. When sati, when attentiveness is developed, that's what you see. Just like it reveals the very basis of reality. We have our own personal interpretations. I exist forever. I'm somebody important, and whatever. I have my special identification with parts of myself I like. But when we just observe it, the parts you like are passing away. Not only the bad stuff. We're happy to get rid of the bad stuff, but the good stuff is passing away too. Just mere phenomena arising and passing. So, as I say, I got 3 more pages of notes here alone. It's only the first exercise. So we come to the first exercise, first general exercise, body awareness, body contemplation. There's 6 exercises here. There's 6 categories of exercise, but actually there's 9 exercises. And they also, as I mentioned, they also kind of have a progression to them. You could say from something more easy, just observing, though the breath meditation is broken into 2 parts. There's part of it is just knowing, observing the breath, long breath, short breath. And then there's the second 2 exercises are training and experiencing the whole body and tranquilizing the bodily formation. And then it goes on to the postures, 4 postures, the bodily activities, being aware of the body in all of its activities. Then it gets into more, you can say, a little bit of discursive meditation, you can say. And the wording of it changes to you consider or review the 31 parts of the body. Review the body in the 4 elements. And then the last one is the 9 meditations on the body in various stages of decay. And the wording of that is when comparing your body to this decaying body. So it's a little bit of a change of, you can say, pure sati of attentiveness. Now one is kind of bringing in a certain amount of thinking aspect to it, considering, reviewing, and comparing, visualization, if you like. So this shows that sati also has various ways to be applied. Or you can say it's sati, and as it develops, then it gathers in other mental qualities. You say sati is a very fundamental attentiveness, very fundamental mental function, but it's kind of instrumental then in triggering off other mental functions too. There is sati, just attentiveness, and then there becomes clear knowing then. If you really see something clearly, if you have attentiveness to something, then you begin to see it more clearly knowing it. So there is one other sutta, which is just about the bodily contemplations in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 119. And in this one, the body contemplation discourse, Majjhima Nikaya, it also mentions that this body contemplation, if one does body contemplation, one has developed the wholesome states which are part of true knowledge. And that one is able to, if one has contemplate the body, one is beyond the realm of Mara. Mara is a personification of death and rebirth. That's just the body meditation. Not even mentioning the other 3 satipatthanas, but this is just mentioning body meditation. So That's how valuable it was, Buddha recognized. And it seems that this body contemplation was used in the Buddha's time, before the Buddha even. It was sort of one of the basic meditations. I mean, in India at the Buddha's time, I think probably most of the bodies, or at least the poor people anyway, the bodies were just thrown in what's called the charnel ground. And the charnel ground is? It was a piece of ground outside the village where they threw all the corpses. And I haven't been to a human charnel ground, but I went past some in India for the animals when I was cycling through India and in Rajasthan. And I was the desert in Rajasthan. And of course, one of the things to think about is water when you're in the desert. So where's the next water source? Where's the next village? Well, all I had to do was look for the vultures flying around. Yeah? Because they were going to feed on the corpses of the animals, you see. So I just followed the vultures. I didn't go right to where they were nesting, mind you, but I knew there was a village nearby. So they used to throw the dead cows and the dead camels and stuff outside the villages. I never went there myself, but I smell it sometimes going past the village. But so when the monks were going almost around to the villages in India, at least out in the countryside, not in the towns, but in the countryside, then it would be very, where we come across the charnel ground. So it's there was a very good source of contemplation. You can say readily available. Maybe it was they even threw some bodies of poor people out there who couldn't afford to be cremated. So anyway, just starting off with, it's going to might be a few talks to do with this one. I might be able to finish the breath meditation anyway. I know people can also only absorb so much information, so I don't want to overdo it. But the main thing is to have some theme to start off on anyway. Because once sati gets to get established, then you get a feel for it, and then it actually begins to function in your life that you don't need all these specific exercises. But for some people, it can be helpful to have it pointed out to you. Oh yeah, breath meditation, right. So anyway, there's many different contexts. Seems that the breathing meditation was probably the most common meditation available in India. It's mentioned in the yogic tradition, mentioned in pre-Buddhist books and things. So it's very, very common meditation for people to follow. But the Buddha used this, and then he, of course, as I mentioned, he was creative, and he was quite original in his approach. So he used it in a variety of ways. And it can be useful for developing sati, as well as for developing deeper levels of concentration. So it is very diverse, very flexible. So in this one, in the development of the breath meditation as a source of sati patana, bring sati to it. First of all, just the using breathing as an object. It's a very common object because we have breathing with us all the time. Yeah. And it's a very calming meditation, focusing on breathing. I mean, just the very fact of it being somewhat, somewhat not so stimulating, very, very common, very, very neutral. You have breathing happening, unless you have a breathing problem, mind you. But if you have, most people, breathing is not so exciting, right? Get up in the morning and say, whoopee, I'm going to take a breath. Not our usual way to wake up in the morning, is it? It's more like, I got to make a cup of coffee. But anyway. And it's the breathing happens all the time, continuously, so it is a very monotonous topic. So it's obvious, it's always present, it's kind of monotonous, so it can provide a very good foundation for stability of mind as an object. It doesn't change a lot. And it was mentioned as being particularly effective meditation object to counter discursive thinking. I mean, just practically speaking, you can bring your attention out of your brain into breathing process. And maybe for some people, it's better to try to observe the breathing, say, lower down in the body, a bit further from the brain, you see. As the breath, if the nostrils, the breathing at the nostrils is close to your brain, so it's not, you can easily go back there again. So some of the teachers, they give the exercise of focusing on breathing, say, in the abdomen or lower belly, in the solar plexus. Some emphasize it in the center of the chest rising and falling with the breathing, where others are very insistent it should be at the nostrils, because there is in this exercise it says to bring mindfulness to be in front, bring mindfulness of breathing into your front. So your nose is the most prominent part of your front, usually, at least Westerners anyway. Long noses. So the exercise points out, first of all, about the right environment. Go to a root of a tree or a cave or a forest, quiet place. But probably it's more or suggestive of going to a quiet place rather than you have to go under a tree to meditate, you see. But just to go to a quiet place. And in India, of course, the villages were very noisy and crowded, and so the obvious place, if you wanted to meditate, to go to a quiet place would be in the forest, the root of a tree. It mentions the posture, sitting up, sitting cross-legged, your back upright. But again, that's kind of a yogic posture. I asked somebody once, a doctor, once when I was in Thailand, because I was doing the sitting posture, and after a while, I don't know, half an hour, my leg fell asleep. And then, but that was the way that it said you have to sit cross-legged, right? But my leg fell asleep every time. So I was a bit worried about it, in case I thought it was the blood circulation stopped, you see. I'd get up after an hour or so, my leg would fall off, or I was doing damage to my leg, So I asked him about it, and he said, oh, no, it's not the blood circulation, it's the nerve. Your leg goes numb because of a pinched nerve, he said. And I said, well, is that going to be damaging? He said, well, if you sit there for 6 hours, it might be. So I said, don't worry, I'm going to be sitting there for 6 hours. But I think the main point is that the body should be in a reasonably comfortable position. I think maybe it was him too also explained that when you sit cross-legged, you see your knees are crossed and your arms are crossed, that the blood to your arms and legs slows down, you see. So more blood is available to go to your brain. I didn't notice that because when I sat too long, I fell asleep anyway, but but that was apparently the source of the yoga posture of sitting cross-legged, see. You cut the circulation down to your arms and your legs, and then more blood goes to your head, you see. Anyway, I think the basic thing is that the body is in a comfortable position. So nowadays, sitting in a chair, I think, is also acceptable, not just cross-legged. And then it mentions about being aware of the breathing, a long breath, when breathe in a long breath, when breathes in a long breath, when breathes out a long breath. That's the first exercise. And one is aware that one is breathing in a short breath, one is breathing out a short breath. And if you've been developing awareness of breathing, you may notice that, when you first come and sit meditation, maybe you have more long breaths. But as the body calms down, or your mind calms down, the breath usually gets calmer too. Okay? So it's like a progression, you're noticing the long breaths when you first sit, gradually become aware of the shorter breaths too, and the calmer breaths. I think these are two specific exercises mentioned, but I think it's also can be helpful or interesting to observe other kinds of breathing. For example, if the breathing is tense or relaxed. Some people are very, they're very ambitious, and they're even in the spiritual practice, and they come to meditation, they want to watch the breath, so they sit there. That's not very helpful. Maybe it's easier to notice your breaths, but after a while you're going to get a headache probably. And so I usually frequently say to people on a retreat, try to observe if your breath is relaxed or tense. If it's too tense, you're probably trying too hard. You're making too much effort, and you can't sustain it. You're going to get exhausted and tired in the end. But to be able to observe the relaxed breathing, it should be this natural, relaxed breathing. It's not an exercise in controlling the breathing, but observing the breathing. And you may notice, if you expand your awareness of observing the kind of breathing, you may notice that your breathing also is affected by your state of mind. As I said before, that the bodily activities, bodily patterns, habits also reflect your moods. So you can use it, observe the breathing, you can observe your states of mind then, and sometimes it's even easier to observe the state of mind through the breathing than the state of mind itself. The state of mind can be a little bit, a bit vague, and you aren't quite certain what it is, but look at the breathing, and you can maybe get a little bit of an opening to it anyway. And as I mentioned, this breathing exercise actually is in two stages. The first part of it just says knowing. One is knowing a long breath and knowing a short breath. And the way that the Pali is written, it is implied that there's some kind of verbal acknowledgement. He knows I am breathing a long breath. He knows I am breathing a short breath. The way the Pali is, it implies that there's a verbal recognition of it, which can be helpful maybe in the beginning to get some clarity of, oh, right, this is a long breath, this is a short breath. But my own experience of using the noting system for a while was that after a while the noting got in the way of the experience. But it can be helpful in the beginning just to be able to register that. Well, this is what a long breath is. This is what a short breath is. This is what a tense breath is, what a relaxed breath is. Then the second of two exercises of breathing, the verb changes to training, from knowing to training. One trains to experience the whole body. And that phrase probably more likely means awareness of the full body, the full physical body. First of all, you're just aware of the breathing at your nostrils or your abdomen or your chest or whatever. But then, once you can do that well enough, the next exercise, now trying to be aware of the whole body breathing. The whole, your body is moving with the in-breath, it rises and falls with the out-breath, and it gets a bit expansive with the in-breath, it contracts with the out-breath. So you're trying to experience that, the whole body breathing. And then the last exercise is to calm the bodily formation. And it's specifically mentioned, this is Kaya Sankhara formation. So it's specifically mentioned in one other sutta that the bodily formation is the breathing, in and out breath. So to calm the in and out breath. And you may notice again, the breath and the body are interrelated, so you calm the breathing to calm the body. It calms the mind too. But this is the last fourth of the exercise, so it's more developed from a sequence of just observing to experiencing a wider variety of breathing rather than just at the nostrils, long breath, short breath, and then to calming the whole body, the breath body. So then the next, maybe the next talk to be about the other 5 exercises. But anyway, this gives you an opening of how to practice it anyway. Starting off with the breathing meditation. That's the basic one, and you can notice that, while we say basic, doesn't mean necessarily the simplest, because it does develop in 4 phases, knowing the long, short breath, and then the training of experiencing the whole body, and then tranquilizing the breath body. So then it goes on to developing from body contemplation, not just the breath, onto the postures, the body and all that, all kinds of physical activities, and then on to the other 31 parts, elements, and the corpse meditations. So the discourse is available to us, and there's not any commentary in the discourse. I think Bhikkhu Bodhi in the translation has a few footnotes, but I'll go into the other aspects of this exercise of body contemplation the next talk, and hopefully we get on to the other three of them. So we have a few more sessions left before the end of the Vasa. So yes, yeah. Have a break. Yep. So you can do the breathing meditation for the next 2 weeks and tell me your experience. Sadhu, sadhu.